In the world of board game media production, one man retains the integrity and tenacity to rise above the rest and compile the definitive list of the 100 best board games of all time. And that man, that legend, is Tom Vassell of the Dice Tower. And some guy named Chaz Marler's apparently made his own top 100 list. Because Tom asked him to.
No, I didn't.
Hey, it's Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise, welcoming you all back once again for the next installment in my top 100 board games of all time series.
Chaz! Hey, Chaz! Chaz!
Jamie? Jamie Keggy of the Secret Cabal? Hi, but what are you doing here?
Well, you did say that I could come and help you reveal your number one game of all time.
Oh, well, yes, that is true, but we still have an entire episode to go through. I mean, we haven't even done number 20 yet.
Yeah, but this game is amazing. I've been tweeting ambiguous teasers all week.
Well, people do enjoy that and don't find it annoying at all. I mean, but still, why would you go and do that?
Oh, it's a life-changing game. It's going to change the way people think about top 100 lists.
Perhaps, but still, no. We're gonna have to get through this episode. You're just gonna have to come back when we actually get to number one.
All right, I'll come back when you reach number one. But listen, this game is gonna blow people's minds.
Perhaps, Jamie. But for now, let's get back to our current list and continue with number 20. This fantastical world of board gamery can be a fickle mistress. Case in point, when you are introduced to a new game that you absolutely fall in love with, only to discover it is out of print. Discovering a game that's out of print typically leads to several stages. Searching for a copy of the game at your friendly local game store, and failing. Then looking for a copy of the game at your favorite online retailer, and failing, considering if your board gaming friend would miss the game if it suddenly went missing off of his shelves, which rarely succeeds, to finally coming to terms with the fact that the game is unobtainable and distracting yourself by moving on to the newest hotness. Such is the story behind the game that would have been number 20 on my list, To Court the King. I discovered this game at a local convention a few years ago and really enjoyed it. It's a game where you start rolling a few dice, and over the course of the game, by getting straights and runs, you'll accumulate more dice to roll bigger straights and bigger runs to gain even more and more dice until you finally have enough dice to roll what you need to win the king's favor and win the game. It's a lot of fun, it uses dice in an interesting way, and it is long gone. However, just a couple years ago, To Court the King was revamped and reintroduced as Favor of the Pharaoh. Now, tell me if this sounds familiar. In Favor of the Pharaoh, players will start with just a few dice, and they'll roll them, and by rolling pairs and triples and runs and sets, they will slowly accumulate more and more dice until they have enough dice on their turn that they can roll them to achieve their primary objective, winning the Favor of the Pharaoh. Now, Favor of the Pharaoh takes what To Court the King started and even builds on it, adding a few extra special dice and maneuvers, wonderful components, pulling it all together into a fantastic package. Favor of the Pharaoh remains a game that is approachable to a wide range of gamer experience levels and also a wide age range. And that's why Favor of the Pharaoh has continued to build and build its momentum up to number 20 on my list of favorite games of all time. Speaking of games that seem to be accessible to a wide audience is number 19 on my list, Forbidden Island. In Forbidden Island, players will take up residence on this island represented by a grid of tiles. But unfortunately, this island is as unstable as one of Jamie Keggy's ambiguous teaser tweets. And it's going to begin sinking. Players will need to locate a collection of artifacts and then a helicopter before they can escape the island. It's a fantastic, cooperative, puzzly game that I like to use as a gateway introductory game at the game clubs that I go to. Now, Forbidden Island eventually led to a follow-up game, Forbidden Desert, which I also have in my collection, but you'll notice that it's still in its shrink wrap. And this is because I'm waiting until Forbidden Island fully runs its course with my family before we crack the shrink on Desert and introduce it. But it just hasn't happened yet. We still enjoy Forbidden Island, which is exactly why Forbidden Island floats on by at number 19. Number 18 is one of those games that when I was introduced to it, I had one of those moments of, really? This is a game? This is awesome! While it does not utilize a board, I believe it is still technically classified as a board game. Perhaps a tabletop game. Hey, look at that! Tabletop game counts! I did it! Without even trying! In your face, Bahalas, in your face. Yeah, that was worth 27 takes. The game that I'm speaking about is called Zendo. And Zendo is played with these small plastic, transparent and opaque pyramids. And in Zendo, one of the players is going to use a random assortment of little pyramids and create kind of a sculpture of sorts. And the other players are going to have to figure out what underlying rule governs this sculpture. For example, maybe the rule is that the sculpture must have a large purple pyramid. Or perhaps it must have an orange pyramid that is touching a green pyramid. Or perhaps the smallest pyramid in the sculpture must be laying on its side and pointing to the largest pyramid in the sculpture, which must be touching a green pyramid. The possibilities are endless. Oh, I have just been informed that the possibilities are finite. But there's a lot of them. A whole mess of them. Zendo is a very cerebral, socially puzzly game, but it's one that will kind of stretch your imagination as you play it. And that is why Zendo has found its place at number 18 on my list of my favorite games of all time. So with Zendo, our list sees the final sit around the table, puzzly, figure out clues type of game until this one, number 17, which is Codenames. In case you've just freshly fallen from outer space to join us, first of all, Quarlarmos. Second of all, here's what Codenames is. In Codenames, there will be a grid of words laid out on the table. Half of the words belong to one team, and the other half of the words belong to the other team. Each team has a leader, and that leader is trying to get all of their teammates to find all the words that belong to their team. And they're going to do this by giving clues. Very, very specifically formatted clues. In fact, the clues are formatted as one word followed by a number. The word is just something to kind of help bring all the words together, and the number is how many cards on the table match that clue. For example, if you had cat and dog, you might say pets, too. Oh, it would seem simple enough, but it's amazing how the players' minds will take a seemingly simple clue and dwell on it and twist it into something that was never intended. Something seemingly simple and straightforward turns out to be a convoluted mess of clues and misinformation. And that's why, on the list of my top games of all time, we'll find Codenames 17. And moving on from games that require guessing and take place in grid form is number 16 on my list, where we return to another favorite type of my games, sandbox games. This one in particular is Xia, Legends of a Drift System. Alright, Spaceman, I can see you wondering, what do I mean by sandbox game? Well, in Xia, Legends of a Drift System, players start out in outermost space with a spaceship that they own, and they can fly around exploring and taking on bad guys, or doing deliveries, or going on missions, or even being bounty hunters and blowing up other players, and all sorts of stuff like that. And the game is structured in such a way that any one of these potential avenues to go down is still a valid way to play and potentially win the game. You want to be a pirate? You can get a full gaming experience and potentially win. You want to be a merchant trader? You could do that too. You want to fly directly into the sun? Well, I've discovered there's also an option for that. Xia starts out with a very small universe, and players go out and expand and explore and randomly build that universe as the game progresses. The only thing that prevents Xia from being higher on my list is the amount of downtime I have encountered between player turns. Granted, I don't know if those results are typical, but it is always a possibility with such an open-ended game such as this one. But still, that does not prevent me from enjoying this game thoroughly. The only thing it does is prevent it from being even higher on my list than where it currently is at number 16. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, for number 15, I would request that you don your safety apparatus, because we are about to enter the spoiler zone. Alright, spoiler alert. Number 15 on my list is not Ticket to Ride. In fact, neither Ticket to Ride nor any of its variations or derivatives will appear anywhere on my top 100 list. It is a game that I must admit I don't really like at all. I find it kind of stinky. Alright, so fair enough, but why venture all the way into the spoiler zone to talk about this game when it's not number 15 on my list? Well, because number 15 on my list is actually the game that completely replaces any desire that I have to play Ticket to Ride, and that is Airlines Europe. The reasons why Airlines Europe is a better game than Ticket to Ride are as clear as the goggle lines on your face. This game takes a similar type of concept, building a growing connection of airline routes to cover more and more area on the board, but adds in this whole stock management side of things that completely just changes the game for the better, in my opinion. If you enjoy Ticket to Ride, or even find it this close, but not quite, I highly recommend giving Airlines Europe a try. It is a great route building, stock management game that keeps things simple enough that's not overwrought, and it definitely has a solid place on my top 100 at number 15. I like to think I give abstract games a fair shake. In fact, one abstract game that almost found its way onto my top 100 list is called Zaar, Tzaar, part of, I believe, a series of games called the Gift series. Zaar is a game where players have a set of chips laid out on this board, and as they move around, their piles of chips can consolidate, grow bigger, which makes them stronger, which allows them to take their opponent's chips, or smaller piles of their opponent's chips, until eventually only one player is left standing. It's my favorite game of the Gift series. But then why isn't it number 14? Because while on my way to the top 100 factory to make this list, I came across a game called Echo. Echo takes this foundation that Zaar was built on, but adds a few more interesting layers to it. For example, players will have several different building types that they're trying to get on the board. And the player pieces, while they still stack and grow stronger, are also used for kind of an area control aspect, preventing their opponent's pieces and buildings from being placed on the board too closely to their own. By comparison, where I feel that Airlines Europe took Ticket to Ride and just kind of pushed it to the next level, same thing with Echo. I feel that it took Zaar and pushed it to the next level. Echo may be mostly out of print or possibly only available through the Belgian publisher's website, but if you can find a copy of it, snag it. Those are the hoops that I had to go through to snag my copy of Echo, but I don't regret it for a second, and I'm happy to say it's number 14 on my list. Alright, Airlines Europe and Echo are both examples of games that take concepts introduced by other games and then kind of build a few extra layers on them and expand them. But this isn't always necessary. Sometimes the most elegant, streamlined game can be the most fun to play. That is certainly the case with number 13 on my list, Onitama. I think it would be safe to say that at its core, Onitama is just a variation of chess, but it's such an elegant design that it is its simplicity that makes it such an amazing game. In Onitama, players only have a handful of pieces available, their monk leader and several students. Players will have a couple of cards in hand that show the different moves that any of their pieces can make that turn. And when you choose which move to make, you'll play that card down on the table, make your move, and then draw a new card to replace it. Then, on your next turn, you'll still have the move you didn't make available and this new move. But the trick is there's only 5 movement cards used in any particular game, and the players are cycling these cards back and forth between each other. So you know that any move that you make, your opponent is eventually going to be able to make themselves, and vice versa. So is it more advantageous for me to make the move I need, or to hold on to a card so my opponent doesn't get the move that they need? I first played Onitama when it was being demoed at a convention, just using little prototype placeholder pieces, but I was so enthralled with this game I could not pull myself away from it. And the final production version increases the quality of the components and the playmat and everything involved with the game. And there is definitely a reason why it has weaved its way to spot number 13 on my list. And following this trend of games that either add a layer of complexity or add a layer of simplicity is number 12 on my list, Volt Robot Arena. Volt Robot Battle Arena, designed by Emerson Matsuuchi, is based on the core principles of another game called Robo Rally. However, and this is of course just my personal opinion, I find Robo Rally as enjoyable as eating a damp sandwich in a gas station bathroom. I find it's just a little too fiddly and a little too overwrought for what it wants to be, and it's just a little too much. Volt, on the other hand, streamlines the process, keeping the rules as simple as possible, allowing the players to concentrate on the gameplay instead of programming and maintaining their robots and the playing field. There is still a programming aspect to it, but one that I feel is a lot more accessible to a wider audience, and it's a game that I thoroughly enjoy. Anecdotally, it is the only game on my top 100 list that has caused my daughter, while we were playing, to laugh so hard that she literally has fallen out of her chair. Apparently, watching your father's robot fall into a pit 3 turns in a row is the most hilarious thing ever. Some would disagree. But the only metaphorical pit that Volt falls into for me is number 12 on my list. And now we come to number 11 on the list, Battleship Galaxies. Now, this game has a very special reason for being on this list, which I'll get to in just a minute. But first, let me tell you how the game works. Battleship Galaxies has almost nothing to do with traditional Battleship. This is more like a miniatures game, in which players each control a fleet of ships that do battle with each other, with the closest correlation to traditional Battleship being that when your ship takes damage, you'll roll dice to determine the coordinates of where your opponent's ship takes damage. Some ships are larger, so there's more coordinates that will be a hit, and some ships are smaller, so they may be harder to hit. It is a crying shame that Battleship Galaxies fizzled out as quickly as it did, mostly due to the fact that Hasbro staked its future on how well the miserable Battleship movie would do. Oh, my head hurts just thinking about that. So what makes this game so special? I mean, it's not only number 11 on my list, but eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that Battleship Galaxies is basically in the background right here of every single video that I've ever recorded in front of this game shelf. Is it because I love the Battleship movie so very, very much? No. I mean, definitely no. Nope. The real reason is how and when this game entered my collection. See, early 2012 is when I discovered the Dice Tower. And at the time, my board game collection consisted of a few gutted copies of Risk that I had collected at thrift shops, and a gutted copy of Axis and Allies a friend had given me, a mostly complete copy of Settlers of Catan, Apples to Apples, and a few 100,000 Magic cards. So there I was in early 2012, rediscovering the hobby, getting excited, and absorbing as many board game review videos as I possibly could. Do I dare go and buy one of these new board games? And if so, which one? I actually put off buying any games at all for quite a while, because I suspected that once I started, it would snowball and I would amass a giant collection. Fortunately, that's nowhere near the case. Dodged a bullet there. But when I had finally mustered up enough curiosity and just couldn't take it anymore and decided to make the plunge, Battleship Galaxies is the first game that I bought. This one right here. And it is a game that I thoroughly enjoy. And have I mentioned how it is a crying shame that its development petered out and there were never any expansions released for it? I mean, seriously, this game is just begging for expansion. No, that's wrong. I am begging for expansions to Battleship Galaxies. This game has so much potential. I mean, just see it the way that I see it, Hasbro. But I digress. The point is that Battleship Galaxies is an underrated game that definitely deserves some attention. And that, amplified by the fact that this is the game that brought me hook, line, and sinker back into the hobby, is why it finds its place solidly at number 11 on my list. And there we go. Another selection from my top 100 games of all time. All that's left is the top 10, the cream of the crop, the pinnacle of my gaming list. Join us next time where we will finish off everything and we'll see just which game comes in at number 8. We'll also see which game comes in at number 1.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Such is the case with the game that would have been number 20 on my list. What is it called? Where they can roll them and achieve the goal's primary objective. The goal's primary objective? The game's primary goal of objectives. Salad bar. It would be nice if the game came with enough dice that every single player had enough that they never had to share their dice. Because once I get a dice, I don't want away my dice rolling, dice and rolling. All right, everyone, attach your safety goggles. Where are my safety goggles? I don't have safety goggles. Keeping all the rules as simple as possible, letting you focus on the gameplay instead of the aspect of programming your robotic hobbits.